You are now live.
Thank you, Asha. Welcome, everyone. Tonight's FBS chat with Ginny and Paul.
Hello.
We're going to talk about local motion. So maybe let's start with introductions. Ginny, tell us about you, where you're from.
Ginnie Landon. I'm representing both LocalMotion and Enfield Women's Centre here. How much detail do you want at this point?
Well, tell us a bit about what Enfield Women's Centre is.
Okay, it's a local charity. It was set up in the 1980s and registered as a charity in 1991. I've been there since 94. Most of the services we've set up have come about as a response, in fact, I'd say all of them, to requests from people in the community who've come asking if we can do something. And I think that's probably, it's a very important part of how we operate, and probably why I like the notion of local motion so much, because we often hear about people who put on events but nobody comes. You know, the authorities have these amazing bells and whistles services, but it doesn't speak to the client group. And for us, that responding to clients' requests and needs, identifying things as they have identified them, is very important to us.
Paul.
So I'm Paul Everitt, and I'm the co-ordinator of LocalMotion. So I'm the staff. LocalMotion it's a initiative of 6 major funders in the UK: Esme Fairbairn, City Bridge Foundation, Paul Hamlin Foundation, Lankley Chase, Lloyds Bank Foundation, and the Tudor Trust initially. And the funders came together to try to understand some of the things that are happening locally in local areas. And they chose 6 areas in the UK to work with. So a place in Wales called Carmarthen, Lincoln, Torbay, Middlesbrough, and Oldham. And in the south east, they chose Enfield, and they chose Enfield for a very specific reason, because it's got very high levels of deprivation in one part of the borough and high levels of wealth in the other side of the borough. And so there's a inequity problem, which is there's inequity all over the country, but in Enfield it's stark. You can see it. There's this huge divide between the east and the west of the borough. And what they also could see is that Enfield is underfunded by their organisations, and and it's understanding what's going on in Enfield that makes that the case. It's not unusual for there to be these place-based initiatives across the country. There are quite a lot of them, but this one has got is particularly looking at systemic change, looking at what is not working for communities, and trying to work out how we can get communities involved directly themselves in being the voice of that change that needs to happen.
Right. So what systemic change, what were the funders hoping to achieve, to find out? What was their goal in this? What is it they were missing?
We did to be honest, they've said to us, here's some money, you tell us. They've been, so there's no restriction on what we can do, except that it has to be charitable. It has to fit the charitable purpose, because they're charitable organisations. So it has to have a charitable purpose, everything we do. But it's up to Enfield the way it's been done. And we've done a research and development period for a couple of years to look at what some of those issues are in Enfield, to sort of to see if it's going to work, and to see whether Enfield is ready for something like this. And we proved to the funders that Enfield is ready for this. And they've now committed funding for the next 8 years for us to do this work, and to see if we can galvanize communities to take things into their own hands, really.
Okay. So
can I just say, Joe, sorry, Ginny, feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you wish to comment.
Okay, I think Paul's doing a really good job. I think you all know me well enough to know that if I want to shout, I will. I promise you.
I just didn't want you to shout while you were on mute.
Did you hear all that? Or
well, yeah. I mean,
good.
8 years. That's an amazing. That's an amazingly long time, and you know, to know that this piece of work can go on.
I think that
yeah, go on.
I think that everybody understands that this is not. We're not looking for a quick fix, and we're not looking to sticking plaster solutions that will just hide a problem for a while. What we're looking to do is try and find what the root of the issues that the community face, and to be honest about that, and to take different approaches in the way that we talk about it. We're finding in our conversations with the community there is, and this is not just Enfield, this is true everywhere, that the levels of trust are very, very low. So to get people engaged in this process is quite a task. Because when we go into communities, quite often the first thing they say is, "We have been asked this 1,000 times. No one's ever listened before. Why are you going to be any different?" And you know, it's that is a massive barrier to people engaging in this process, because you know, who the hell are we, new people coming along and asking the same old questions that people have ignored for years and years and years. So that's a big thing for us to overcome.
So,
can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, Ginny.
I've done it right then. Okay, it'll take me a little while. Remember, I'm really old.
Yeah.
Bear with me. I think I wanted to sort of talk a little bit more about what Paul's just been discussing, and that is it's not just distrust in the concept. I think a lot of people don't understand it. You know, the idea that there's this group of people trying to promote something in the area, and that there is all these amazing funders behind it, that people are desperate. Everybody's desperate to get services to their client group. So they all initially thought it was basically another funding stream, and trying to get people to understand this is about changing how we operate and, you know, how we relate to each other. It's taking some doing, it's taking patience. I think Paul's doing a good job at it, but you know, as our titular, you know, that person out there, but we're working slowly, and we're working on, you've had a couple of projects to try and explore how people are feeling, which I'm going to let Paul talk about because I'm sore. Yeah, I think building that knowledge and trust is still part of what we're doing at the moment.
Okay. And you said about changing how we operate.
Yeah.
So what is it about the way we're operating at the moment that, I'm not saying needs fixing, but we should really start thinking about?
Okay, I think a lot of it is about us talking to each other. The whole thing about co-production, which everybody's talking about now. And I've been to meetings where I'm told that what we're going to do is co-production because they decided it, and this is it, and this is what we will be doing. My English is fairly good. That's not co-production. That's somebody outside had another meeting, decided, came and told us. So it's really difficult when the people who we feel ought to be leading on this actually haven't grasped the concept yet. And the whole thing is that we don't impose things on it without consulting the client group. I think Paul, the young people, when they came to one of our events where we were looking at stuff, they said, nothing about us without us. And I think that's become almost a mantra for those of us in the coordinating group, as you know. And I also recall that during the lockdown, the COVID lockdown, going to lots of meetings because people were very worried about, people not taking precautions, not taking when they came up the vaccinations, and what was about it. And a lot of it was about who was delivering the message, how that message was being delivered, and that it needed to be somebody who looks like me and sounds like me that I can relate to, rather than yet another boffin egghead expert, and it's confidence levels were being hit. And of course, we know there was all the chit chat in the background of the naysayers and people who were creating problems. But it's really brought home to me that what we've been doing, responding to people who come and say, oh, we want to go for a walk, but I can't go for a walk in the park anymore because I got raped in the park. So we set up walks so that that client could come with us. And that grew into something that lasted 25 years or something. And it was great. Back when I could walk still, I loved doing those walks. People came and said that they wanted to learn English. And I also heard of women who were going to see the GP and taking their 11-year-old son to explain her menstrual problems. So we thought they need not just to learn English, but they need to learn English with words relating to the body function and stuff. So we set up something, we called it Lavender, and it was basically, we had an ESOL tutor and a masseuse, and they were teaching massage and the language at the same time, which really encouraged people to come to the classes, which again, you can see, but we put on ESOL, nobody comes, give them something to come for. And it, it was looking to actually address that issue, that they didn't want to have to take their children to explain everything. It's a really difficult thing to do. So I'm going to let Paul talk, because I did tell you I could talk for a week.
And it sounds like you're obviously trying to listen to what residents of the borough want or feel that's missing, so that kind of that community voice. So like you said, young people are saying, I want to be involved about decisions that affect me, pretty much. And then you have who else should be getting involved? So we've got the clients and listening to their needs. I'm guessing the voluntary sector. Who else are we, or who else are you targeting with this LocalMotion?
Everybody. We want to. We need to understand where the systems aren't working for people, and that takes a bit of work. That's understanding the system. Where is it going wrong? Where aren't people being properly listened to? Where are things being designed which are for the organization and not for the customer at all? And that takes a bit of work, really, because everybody thinks they know what's wrong, but actually what we're trying to do is dig deeper into that so we can get to the root causes of the problems. And we're not about blame, and we're not about pointing fingers. We're not about, shouting at authorities saying, oh, you've done this wrong. What we're about is working together with them to get them to understand. We haven't got the resource to recreate organizations that aren't working properly. We need to be talking to those organizations and persuade them to start working properly. So the infrastructures that are in place that should be working for the community start to work for the community. That's the work we've got to do. And persuade communities that the power of that is in their hands. We need to organize. It will help the community to organize themselves so that their voice is properly heard. I mean, one of the big powers that we know that we've all got is we've all got the ability to vote in an election. Look at the election turnout in Enfield. Why would anybody listen to what the community have got to say? If you're a local politician, who do you, and your main purpose is to get into office, who are you going to listen to? The 26% of people who bother to vote in the areas in Enfield that vote. We recently did a meeting in Ponders End with to talk about some of the issues that they're facing. And I asked the room who voted, and out of the whole room, 2. And you said, well, people are letting go of the power that they've got.
Yep.
So if we're looking at empowering people, we need to really think about that and take some responsibility ourselves for what we're not doing, for those moments when we say, oh, that they're all the same, that it doesn't matter, and then disempower yourself, really. So there's lots of areas for us to look at. It isn't just the system, isn't just the organizations. We're part of the system too, in the way that we behave and the way that we act together.
And I guess a lot of the apathy about voting, I guess, is, you touched on it a bit earlier, is that who can I actually trust?
Yeah.
Because who am I voting for? Are they actually going to carry it through? And I think you're right. It's a shame. 26% is. I didn't know it was that low, to be fair. But yeah,
in the west of the borough, in the more affluent parts of the borough, it's higher, but not great. Yeah. It's higher, but still not great.
Wow. Okay. So, why should people get involved in LocalMotion? What is the point? Why am I wasting my time?
Why are we wasting the time? What's the point?
I'm joking about that, but
no, I think that's a fundamental question. I think you're absolutely right. Why should they bother? Because I think everybody. I think we're at a point, aren't we, all of us, and you can feel it everywhere, that everybody knows that everything's broken, nothing's properly working. The things that we've taken for granted aren't working properly, and we need to engage in that, and we need to change the narrative of who's doing this for me, what are we going to do together as a community.
So there's a couple of points. May I interrupt?
Please.
Sorry, Paul. I love you. One thing is that we have become, I mean, I don't like the concept, the nanny culture, but there's almost an expectation, especially amongst people who've had multiple sort of deprivations and things, who've been beaten down, you know, so that they're looking for someone out there to give them their solution, and they've lost that sense of any personal power or ability to actually do anything. And I think that will then, this concomitant thing where they don't believe that their vote will have any impact. So they've had one before, so why now? And I think, oh God, I've forgotten what I thought. How what, Mum? But I think building, that's it, building confidence. That thing about low-hanging fruit. So doing small things that makes people see that you are making an effort. I think one of the projects we've done that I think is really good is the homelessness workshops we've run, which Citizens Advice led on. They're really good, and now the local authority is becoming more engaged in talking to us, whereas before it was them telling us. Now they're saying, "What's going on? Something's happening over in that corner. Let's find out." And that's a good feeling. That has a real good buzz about it. Another thing that's really good is, the project for counselling for men, especially for black men, because, those of us who work in the counselling arena, we know what a difficult thing it is for anybody to go seek counselling. But when you come from a culture where, I've got 7 brothers, and honestly, they're brain dead when it comes to therapy. They'd rather admit, they'd rather walk into a brick wall than say they need help. But I know that's not everybody, but I think that project has been absolutely tremendous. And from that's grown other things. I think there's talk about looking at a council for guys and stuff. Paul knows more about this because this is what he does every day. I sit in the women's centre doing my needlepoint, so I'm kind of separated from this. That's what I was at a conference yesterday, and a bloke came up and said, "Oh, women's centre, that's not for me." I said, "Oh, okay." And he said, "Well, what do you do?" So I looked him in the eye and I said, "We teach women how to hate men." Because he was expecting, and he was brilliant. He was really good. He roared with laughter, and he said, "I deserve that." I said, "Oh no." But we ended friends because, we were playing each other's stereotype, and it was really good. But going back to the low-hanging fruit, I think the thing, say, with Ponders End, because our organisation built the buildings in Ponders End, and I know because I was at those meetings too this year. If we could get them, we're working on getting them to revitalise their community forums, which used to be really good under a previous political administration, and there were strong voices, but there were some expected strong voices who asked for the same things over and over again. And what you want to do is strengthen the voices of the people who are coming with real difficult things. Having rats in the area, God, we all know there are rats. The rats are everywhere. There are more rats in this city than there are people, and there are far too many people. But to come to every meeting and bang on about rats, I'd buy you a book that would give you more enjoyment, give you something else to think about. But there are people who are wanting to break out of that awful feeling of, my life is hell, I can't change it, my children are going to end up with the same life as me. That's a horrible place to be. And if we can help them to believe through these new fora that there is something they can do to be part of changing it for themselves. There's nothing greater than being part of it. I think, I'll die happy next week after my birthday.
Let's hope not, Ginny.
I think just picking up on that, I think what's really important in that discussion about changing this dialogue where somebody else is going to do for you. Is what that leads to is when you're giving all your power to somebody else, that somebody else you're giving to the power to does not understand anything about you or anything about your situation. Our communities in Enfield know much more about what they need, and probably, I have no doubt, have the solutions to the issues that they face themselves. And so they need to be directly engaged in resolving those issues. And that's been the problem of this shift to dependency. And the dependency culture is not a choice that communities made. It's sort of, they've been disempowered for years and years and years and years, and we've got to somehow change that.
I mean, sorry, go on, Joe.
I was just going to say, I really like that analogy you just made about giving power to people that don't actually know what your real issues are. So it's time that, hopefully, and it sounds like what you guys are trying to do is give that voice to people that actually are living that experience and treating them as experts in a way.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I think there's a phrase called experts by experience. That we have become experts in our own lives. So, you know, we are the people who can talk, you know, with the most knowledge about it. But we need some help. We're not all, you know, able to articulate everything straight away. But after working with some women who come to us, I know that it doesn't take an awful lot for them to start to think and move on.
Yeah. And I think that is to support anybody in the community to help execute whatever goal they want to reach, rather than we can tell you how to do it, so go off and do it. It's about giving them the confidence and the skill set and the tools to go off and do it themselves. And there may be challenges on the way. It's kind of supporting each person. So how are you going to overcome that challenge? And I think when I think back, and I was talking about this the other day, when I think back to years ago, you had all, you know, if you had a challenge, you had to face it on your own. And yes, that does have negatives to it as well. However, you had to use your brain and you had to think. You had to go and find information in the library or talking to people about it. Whereas now we just Google everything, or go to someone, and most, not all, but most services will just give you a list and say, well, if you do this, and this, and this, then it'll be okay. Rather than, what do you think, as the expert in your own life, the solution is? And how can you break that down into small, manageable steps to get there? Because that then supports them in using those parts of the brains again, reigniting their brain, and also feeling in control and being in control. It's not just a feeling, it's actually being in control. But it's having the LocalMotion there, organisations like the LocalMotion, which is why I'm quite fond of it. You're thinking, no, actually, you are here, you have a voice. I'm just going to help you find it and then use it.
So let me ask, well, I've got one. The first question is, who can actually get involved in LocalMotion? And why should they?
Well, it really is. I mean, you know, I hate to say something for everyone. That usually means nothing for anyone. But it really is. Anybody who wants to, you know, join this conversation, it is. We're trying to build a movement for change. So we want people to join our movement, really. And we're really looking at the heart of what we're looking at is inequity. We've got terrible inequity across the country. In Enfield, it's so visible, and we want to start tackling that inequity. We want to understand what's at the root of the inequity that's taking place, and we want to make sure that the people at the sharp end of that inequity are the voices that we're raising.
Yeah.
And the voices that are at the sharp end of that inequity, when you hear some of the stories, it's absolutely shocking. We're doing a dive into disability at the moment, which is being led by Annie Small from Facefront Theatre and Jazan Arts. And it's right at its beginning, because you know that at the moment, what we're hearing is the disabled community doesn't have a voice anymore, a strategic voice at the table of decision makers, because the voice that was there, Enfield Disability Action, collapsed. So there is nobody representing that voice. And at the same time as that voice not being heard, the abuse of people with disabilities is going through the roof. So as a society, we're also, there's something going on as well, that is happening, and we need to look at that. We need to look at the system failure that's meant the collapse of a strategic disability organisation, and we need to look at, well, what's going on with our community that can happen, that the most vulnerable people in our community are being abused on the street in the most extraordinary situation, that after all the conversation and after the Disability Discrimination Act and everything like that, that still there's the way that streets are designed, obstacles, you see it in Enfield Town, growing obstacles being put in the way, that mean that disabled people can't get. If you're blind, how do you negotiate all that street furniture popping up all over the place? So as there's no disabled voice any longer at the table, no wonder those things are starting to happen. And they're the things we need to look at. Why have we let that go as a society, as a community in Enfield? How have we let that happen? And why aren't people up in arms about it? Why don't people care?
I was horrified when I found out. We used to, have good ties with EDA, but for some reason we went through a period when we didn't do that. When we came back, they were gone. So we take responsibility for that. But I'm disabled. I think you all know that. But I think that if we're looking, I think part of the centre, the Women's Centre's funding comes under something they used to call the equality strand. So what happened to disability as an equality issue in this borough? And I think, I know Annie Small, and I'm glad she's doing it. She's great. I'd like to talk to her about maybe that's something we should be challenging them who think they live out there, who think they have to design things to do to us down here, and say, how come this happened?
Yeah.
But and that then you when you start looking around, there's also, where is the LGBTQIA plus provision? Besides the LGBT network, who are doing great work, what is there in the east of the borough?
It's very, 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 very sad, but there's nothing. I know just this week I joined as the Women's Centre's representative, the North London Trans Forum. And there's a lot of people looking for support there. I went there because we've been supporting a couple of families and people for over the years, And I was thinking, if I find it this difficult, and I'm a nosy old bag, how difficult somebody who's, just going through all that horror of questioning themselves and, who do I tell? What do I do? Where do they go? We need something a lot more visible and a lot more user-friendly. But some people are frightened to even mention it because they don't, the people out there, the baying hyenas, the donkeys that bray all day, they've got such loud voices. The voices of hate are stronger than the voices of love, of caring. And we need to it's going to be difficult living on this planet for the next several years. I hope I make it through. I really want to see how it turns out.
But we're a strange. But this is where Enfield is a real conflicted place, because we've got this no disability voice, central voice in Enfield, and yet we've got two exceptional theatre companies, Facefront and Chicken Shed, that are world-class disabled institutions. So we've got this strange thing going on, that we've got fantastic examples of positive things going on, and then terrible absence in strategic areas, and we need to understand that, and I think quite often it's how how EDA can disappear, because we've got we can look regular basis and see the fabulous things that Chicken Shed are doing and the wonderful things that Facefront are doing, and it can hide the fact that that for ordinary people, the services aren't there. And we just need to understand that. We need to, we must celebrate these great successes, but we must care for what's important for people's daily lives. Yeah. And, while there's no LGBT, besides the LGBT network, but there's great examples of things going, Sissy Lee, it became went on Drag Race in Italy, and so there's personalities from Enfield doing very well. So where's the infrastructure for ordinary people? So that we need to come to terms with that, and quite often the system points to those exceptions to say, oh look, it's fine, to cover up the fact that things are happening.
I think it's important to have these wonderful groups. I think that for some of the people that we're working with, we need to take the groups to them. I love Chicken Shed. My grandchildren, that. They're there.
They're exceptional.
They're brilliant. But, and I love Annie Small. I've known her from decades. And she did a wonderful thing in Ponders End called Ponderful People. And the grandchildren still sing the Ponders End Plonk song. Thank you, Annie. And that brought it to the community, and it really, really put a buzz in the community. I think that it was quite the project was great, and it was presented in a huge marquee in Ponders End Park, but it's taking it out there to where people are at. If we can maybe look at ways of taking these messages about difference, about change, and and actually deliver them to people in a format that's interesting, challenging but not frightening, and encouraging and getting people to join in.
Because
Now, I've given you the puzzle. I leave you to solve it, Paul.
no, because I mean,
Well,
looking at what you were just saying about, you know, the barriers that people with disabilities face, and how sad it is that EDA is no longer around. So, as an example of LocalMotion, let's take that for example. What do you hope to achieve by what you found out? What's the next step for LocalMotion to alleviate this issue for disabled people in the borough? Just as an example.
Well, what we aim to do now is convene all the different organisations and the community as well, who are working in this area, to find out what they want to do and what they want to do with this situation. Because it's not for we are not going to come up with solutions, because that would just be replicating the system that isn't working for the community. We need to bring the community together and support them then to find that solution for themselves. And it could be trying a couple of things out first of all, to find out what they need, what needs to, who needs to be that strategic voice at the table, and what that strategic voice be saying. What are the issues that can go, and that's what we're that's what we're listening to at the moment. What the issues are that the disabled people are saying to us, and that research is right at the beginning stages. So we're going to take that on. We're doing a series with the Enfield Dispatch. We did our first one now, and because of this issue, our next issue is concentrating on disability, because of this piece of research.
So it sounds like there's a lot of speaking to the community, gathering information, and then at some point consolidating it all, and then looking at next steps, how we can make things better. Is there any parts of the community that you're finding difficult to engage and you wish they would?
I'm sure there's tons. I think that there'll be more of the community we haven't heard than we have so far. And that, I think that's another thing that we're hoping to do, and it's another reason why we're doing the Dispatch article. We're hoping that people will start flagging themselves up and saying, "You're not talking to us. Why aren't you talking to us?" And that's what we want. That's what we want people to say. We want to say, "You're not. Why haven't you knocked on our door?"
Yeah.
May I ask a question? May I? So this is 8-year funding, you guys said?
Yeah.
So imagine in 8 years' time, you have a reporter in front of you asking you a series of questions in 8 years' time. But one of the questions are, what successful outcomes have you reached over the 8 years? What would you like to say? So in all the in the next 8 years, you're going to be working really, really hard. What successes do you want to see at the end of the 8 years, so you can say, we managed to do this, 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 this? It's a big question.
It would. There probably wouldn't be this, and this, because I think I think we're in a world of constant change. So in 8 years' time, things will be different anyway. What I would hope has changed is that the community, the legacy that we will have left, is the community have taken things into their own hands, so that they are ready for all the you know, all the things that are coming at us all the time, aren't they? And over the last couple of years, it's felt like things have been coming at a rate of knots, and the community feel that they have got the levers to take control of their situation. That would be the change that we want to see.
I think it's something people often look for. They want stuff that's quantitative, because that's how we identify what's going on. And we also are looking at qualitative change. And a lot of what LocalMotion is wanting to do is about qualitative change. But I think if you're talking in terms of community development and stuff, you do need to have some sort of things. For instance, you were talking about something earlier, the awful percentage of voting in the area. Say in 8 years' time, we'll have had 2 elections, local ones. I can handle the trauma of another national one, but that hopefully there'll be some, you know, increase in voting uptake. We had stack of leaflets delivered to us at the centre in a range of languages, encouraging people to make sure that they are actually enrolled to vote. So we're trying to get that out there. And it's important for us as a women's centre, because in some cultures it's not deemed a womanly thing. You know, you don't vote, you don't get involved in politics. Well, you know, you do. And you know, and if it's our lives and everything we do. We're going back to the 70s. We used to say the personal is political. So if we want to change in our personal life, we have to. And I'm talking political with a small p, not party political, although sometimes things do end up falling within the domain of one or other of our parties. And I think, I'm trying to think also that perhaps we're looking at isolation and mental health issues in the subgroup I'm in. And I'd like to perhaps see that, yes, there's an uptake in services that are being provided so that there's more services available, but there are more people accessing them, not because I think everyone in the borough should be going around wearing a badge saying I'm mentally ill, because I think most of us are anyway. It's a lot easier. Mentally ill.
The thing is, Ginny,
go on.
Sorry, Ginny. Sorry to cut you, Ginny. The way I'm kind of looking at LocalMotion is that in 8 years' time, it will have such a knock-on effect that it could make a significant difference, because it's not just about giving the community a voice, it's giving the communities within the community that voice, encouraging everybody to work together in collaboration, you know, having useful meetings, empowering adults and young people, which will then have a knock-on effect with less need for social care input, even less need for mental health input, because when you give people a voice and when you talk about empowering them, the likelihood of them feeling anxious starts to decline. Because most people that are going through anxiety at the moment is because they are feeling empowered, and they're so used to not having, I'm saying most, I'm not saying all, they're so not used to exploring challenges and what that looks like and the fear of facing a challenge, that they feel very, very anxious. But by feeling more empowered and having that voice, whatever that looks like for each individual, it will start to have a knock-on effect, doesn't matter what age they are, you know, with your grandchildren, with your children, because there's secondary trauma, secondary anxiety, and children are growing up feeling anxious and depressed, not knowing why. It's just normalized because that's what parents are going through. So this is just how I'm supposed to react. Just like with domestic abuse, that's psycho-domestic abuse. So when we're looking at outcomes, it actually has such a knock-on effect. We can't take the whole giving people a voice lightly. It's a big thing. And then within that, you've got other voices that voice represents.
I think domestic abuse is something. I'm on the Vaughan Strategic Group in the borough, and we spend an awful lot of time looking at the statistics and stuff and what's been happening and things like that. We never ever talk about how we try and persuade people to change and not do it. And it seems as though the system is set up to log how many people have been hurt, how badly they've been hurt, which communities and age groups they come from, demographic groups, whatever. But I think we need to look at an overriding voice which says this is not a great way for us to be behaving because it's not good for us. And I think if LocalMotion can do something there, I'd like to bring that up. I haven't done it yet. It's not, so don't expect any great shakes yet. But I think we've got White Ribbon Week coming up in a couple of weeks. The White Ribbon campaign began in Canada when some guy went and shot a lot of young women students because he wasn't happy that they were on an engineering or mechanical course and he felt they should not be there. And it was set up by a man, and it was about men taking a pledge to always speak up, stand up, against violence. But it's always us women's groups who are asked to do something about White Ribbon Day. And I think I heard for the first time that this year from within the network that guys need to take the pledge, but they're still, so it's about, if we're going to look at changing things, maybe this is one thing we can look at. It's very specific, but it's a very damaging part of our modern living. Right? I didn't want to get on one of my hobby horses.
like anyone could stop you, Ginny.
Like we would stop you.
So how do people get involved, guys? What do they need to do?
Talk to Paul.
Talk to Paul.
Yeah. Get in touch if people see. We've got our social media pages where we post about events that we've got coming up that people can come along to, or just email me and say, "Oh, we want to get involved. How can we?"
Cool. And have you got something coming up that people might feel a bit excited about and get involved in?
What have we got coming up, Ginny?
Ginny, what's happening? What's happening?
This is called payback, isn't it, Paul? Well, I think everybody in this group knows that I've been trying to convene groups who provide support to people through counselling and other therapies. And we're trying to set up 2, possibly 3 more meetings. Don't want it to be an endless talking shop. So Paul and I were going to talk about theming the meetings, and we were going to talk to you too as well. We need to do that outside this, but to try and progress it to actually have themed meetings and ask people to come to look at particular aspects rather than, I've been to meetings where people have talked, we go back to domestic violence, it's a terrible thing and it happens, and I'm sitting there and I'm hearing the same thing and I'm thinking, yes, but what are we going to do about it? Because I've all, in one of those tests that they do, I'm a pragmatic activist apparently. My colleague is a theoretic reflector. Poor woman. How she survived with me.
I'm with you. And that's the thing, because when you guys
suck it and see. If you can't figure out why, just try it.
Go on, Paul.
I think though that we, while I understand the need for action, and in so many things there is a need for action, there is also a need for us to hear all the voices around the table, and I think that there's a lot of people who aren't being heard. I mean, sometimes when we're doing meetings, you can get you can get the thing where the same people are turning up to all the meetings no matter what the subject, and you realize you're not listening to all the voices. So some of what we're doing at the moment is now digging deeper rather than doing those advertised meetings, going in and talking to communities directly, so that we are hearing as wide a spectrum of voices as we possibly can. But in that, we really, there's a lot that we need to unpick and understand, and we need to also have some patience to get to the bottom of things and not rush it, because I think part of some of the people, decisions aren't being made, bad decisions aren't being made usually in malice. They're usually being made in a rush. They're being made to a deadline, which is, there's, where the government will allocate some funding and you've got 5 weeks to make a decision on how you're going to spend it. And so stupid decisions are made because of the stupid amount of time that's been given. We've got 8 years to do this work. And though I don't propose that we do 8 years of investigating our naval, but we do need to take the time to really think about what people really want to do, and there'll be a conflict in that, because there's a lot of people need action now, but if we take action without understanding what the issues are, all we'll be doing is replicating the system that's happening that we're trying to do something about. So we need to be very mindful of making sure that we're listening to what people are saying, particularly the people who are the most affected, who aren't being heard at all, actually.
And I think that's a very good point, because I think there's a lot of initiatives. We've seen them come and go over the years. Somehow we've survived this long. I don't know how, but anyway. But there's great initiatives. Funding lasts for 2-3 years, then they're gone, then something else. We just need a bit more consistency, Paul, don't we? Yeah.
And time is what was that Chinese person who was asked a couple of years ago, what did they think of the French Revolution? And they said it's too early to tell.
I love.
What do you think of what I missed, that, Paul?
Oh, I don't boil my cabbage twice, Diane.
Oh, my fingers want to talk.
We are drawing to the end, so I want to say, when you guys first invited us to the LocalMotion meeting, one of the first things I said in that meeting was, if this is just going to be all talk and no action, eventually, now I say, after Paul just said what he said, which I agree with, because I'm like Ginny, I'm like, idea, let's go, idea, let's go, idea, let's go. And Joe is, so Paul and Joe work very similar, Ginny, and you and I work very similar. Oh, I have an idea, let's go. Oh, I have an idea, let's go. But I mean, the charity wouldn't have been born without that idea. Just saying, guys, I'm just putting it out there. But one of the first, thank you, Ginny, thank you. One of the first things I said in this meeting was, I'm here out of respect for Paul and Ginny. That's it. Did I not? I said, and that's why I'm here. But if it's going to be like all the other meetings that we're invited to, and I leave after 10 minutes, don't expect me to come back. But I was pleasantly not surprised, because I know with you two involved that I need to actually listen and not play Candy Crush during a meeting. But I was really listening, which, yes, I've just revealed my secret. I was really, really listening to the passion, to the change that you guys are looking to make by creating the change and allowing the change to happen almost organically with the people in the community, by using their voice. It's like a whole factory of voices putting things together and saying, right, this is what's happening. And like you said, Paul, 8 years in something like this is a long time, or can be seen and deemed as a long time. However, change is inevitable, as Joe keeps saying. It's going to keep evolving and evolving. And the idea you might have now may not be valid in 2 years' time. But this is why we believe, or Joe and I'm speaking on behalf of Joe, think, well, this is it's amazing. We couldn't have thought of any better leaders to be kind of leading the community with LocalMotion. And this is, don't cry now, Ginny, when I'm going to say this. Don't cry. On behalf of Family-Based Solutions, we are walking side by side with you guys every day. You just got to let us know what you want us to do. Oh, what an emotional thing to say.
Beautiful.
Oh, look
Very
at
nice.
me.
You know any millionaires?
Well done.
But actually, what you said there about leaders, that's what we are looking for, future leaders, and we're looking for how do we find those future community leaders and put some investment into them and give them the training that they need to take over, basically.
Mm.
They need to be younger. They need to be younger
What was
than
that,
me.
Ginny?
They need to
Need to be younger than Ginny.
Me.
I'm trusted
Are
about
they
younger
taking
than
the
you.
mickey?
Yeah, well, look, I can silence both of them and get them off air if you want me to. Like, all you need to say is do it.
How lucky are we in Enfield? What is it, Paul? Only one of 6 areas in the country?
Yes.
Let's make the most of it. That's all
Yes.
I can say.
Yeah. Very important.
Thank you,
I
guys.
really enjoyed this.
No.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, any last words? Let's start with Paul. Any last words for anyone watching now or watching later on?
Come and join us when you feel ready to do so in your own time, because we're going to be around for a while.
Not pressure, but get on your emails and start emailing. Ginny?
Okay, I'll go and see the GP and improve my health so that I am around for a little bit longer. I think for
That would be
me,
nice.
the first step is always the most difficult. You watch this and you've survived it. We're not turned you off the idea. Get in touch with Paul. He's desperate to talk to you.
Definitely. And Mr. Lettieri?
Well, I think as a community, going back to the voting, we've lost trust. We've lost trust in how systems work and how people above us work. So if we can get together as a community under LocalMotion and get our voices heard, and those voices start to see results, then you're on a winner. Thank you for being there.
Thank you. I've always
So can I ask you? Oh, thank you, Ginny. And you've been there for us from. Well, you've been there for us from the start, from the very beginning of. It
was an event in Tanners and Lane. I met that man, and he was
not like Paul, this Johnny come lately.
Oh no!
I'm joking, Paul. We love you.
Love it. Right, can I ask Paul and Ginny to stay right there? Don't go anywhere. But everybody else, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time on FBS Chat.
Thank you.